Hi everyone, Dominic Katarski here, founder of Sales Success Academy, and welcome back to Sales Success Studio, where in this session we're going to cover the 5 essential steps to creating a sale. And this is one of the most important processes that we all can learn in sales, and one of the most difficult things to learn and get right time in and time out. But once you master this, and once you can follow in some ways, not necessarily sequentially, but once you can follow the steps, this will really serve you, because the process is everything. If you want to be successful, everything involves systems. And the great thing about this process is it's natural. It leads through naturally how we work in conversation, naturally how two people communicate. And I know you're going to this will serve you and it will help you. And thousands of salespeople are using this system all over the world to create successful sales for themselves. And that's why I wanted to bring it to you, and especially bring it into Sales Success Academy, because we want the best of the best. So let's get started with the 5 steps to essential sales. And the most important step is obviously the first step. As you say, you never get a second chance to create a first impression. And what you want to do when you first meet somebody and you have, you're first on your call, the first and the most important thing you want to be able to do is you want to be able to engage with your customers. And engagement is something that is very simple, but very unique and very important that you can do that. And engagement is something that involves 2 people. It's not one-sided. And obviously there's some really simple, basic things you can do that oftentimes we forget. And in my book, if you have read my book, The Making, you know that when I first started, even just the basic introduction was difficult for me. And oftentimes I had even, trying to be aware of yourself. Are you, doing certain things? And the first important and the most important thing that you want to be able to do is you want to be able to smile when you're meeting your customers for the first time. And I know it sounds basic, but smile is something that resonates and it rubs off. And studies have shown that it creates endorphins actually in other people's brains. And as we know, endorphins are those little chemicals that help us feel good. And that's important, because if you can get people to feel good and you can transfer some of your feeling good, your state, your successful state into the customer, then the conversation is going to go a lot smoother and go a lot better. The next thing we want to be focusing on is trust, establishing trust. And trust is something that obviously has to be earned over time, but there's certain things that you can do as a salesperson to create that trust in your first engagement with the client. And trust can be measured by many things, but one of the interesting formulas that were created by David Meister is he has a nice formula that basically works like this. He says that trust, I'll put this on the other sheet and then we'll come back, is that trust is equal to C plus R plus I divided by self-orientation. And I'll explain that in a minute. In order to create trust, you need C, which stands for credibility. So credibility usually comes from either your product or your brand, but from you it also comes from yourself. If you were referred by another customer, then you've got credibility. The second is reliability, and that's just doing what you say. If you set the appointment for a certain time, you show up for that time. And also often you'd be amazed at how many people get this wrong. Just do what you say what you're going to do. If you say you're going to send an email the next day, send that email the next day, and usually it's important to follow up within 24 hours. And the third is the I stands for intimacy. And intimacy is just you being personable with the client and not just asking them about certain parts of their life, but also giving parts of yours. If you have children, or if you have a girlfriend or they have a boyfriend, that's the intimate side, or intimate details that you've covered and stories that you've got. It's very important that you can share that. And this is all, when you work on this side, it's all building up trust. Now, the self side, this is called self-orientation. And self-orientation is how much you talk about, for instance, how great you are, how great your product is, how great your service is. And the more you talk about that, it diminishes on the credibility, reliability, and the intimacy. So what you want to make sure you do is, in order to foster and build trust, is that you focus on the top 3, focus on your credibility, focus on your reliability, and focus on your intimacy. And you work a lot less about, for instance, talking about how great your product or your service is. And that's very, very important. So make sure you're working on your trust in your engaged side, and this is something that obviously gets built up over time. And the third thing you're doing when you're engaging with your customer in your introduction, I'm going to obviously write that because introduction is basically, if you're cold calling, which is a lot of my expertise, is you're trying to create that engagement within the first 5 or 10 seconds. And that's one of the most important things that you can do in your introduction. And then the last thing is so important that you have authenticity. And this is something that I see all over the internet, I see everywhere, but every sales book I pick up is talking about authenticity. And that's just you being you. But you being you at your best, not you being you at your worst. We all have different sides and different aspects to ourselves. And that's you being you. And I think that one of the biggest things that affected me, that I understood when I first, when I was a young lad, 23 years old, out selling for the first time after university in a really professional sales job, I realized that I could actually make money and make sales just being myself. And I found that if I tried to be somebody else or tried to act like somebody else, like the people who trained me, what happened is the connection just went down, and I felt like I was always struggling. So be yourself, just relax yourself, be the best you can be confident, be enthusiastic, and make sure that you're working on these 3 things when you first start with your engagement. And if you do that correctly, what you'll find is you're building a small little bit of impulse, and this will bring you to the next step. And once you have created good engagement, on your next step, what you want to do is you want to explore. And in your exploration, the reason I say explore is because sales has changed over the years. It used to be where you could just go in and push your product in front of people because there were so few products or so few services that would hit their need. Now you've got a lot of competition, so what you want to do is be able to try to get on the side of the customer. Almost like when you sit in a sales conversation, make sure you don't sit across. Like you won't sit mano a mano to somebody. You won't sit across the table because that's too conflicting. So when you're exploring, I have the vision that you're doing something together. When you go on an exploration, it's something that you're doing as a team, and it's something that you're both doing together. So when you're going to the next step, and this is really where you're going to basically be in a situation where you're going to qualify your customer, you want to make sure that you're exploring the situation and the options for you to be able to make a sale. The other thing is that you want to make sure you're talking to the right person. And all too often is I see salespeople waste, because time is important, not only yours but the clients, waste a lot of time because they're over spending time with the wrong person. And during your exploration, you want to be asking questions to make sure, are you dealing with the decision maker? And I'm not sure if you can see this because I don't have my camera person here today, my beautiful camera lady. So this says decision maker, and I'll point that down. So during your exploration phase, make sure that you're talking or finding out if you're dealing with the decision maker, because the decision maker is really the one you want to be getting access to. And if not, you want to explore to find out, well, who is the decision maker, or if your company was going to take this product or service, who would be the best person to talk to, and get that information. And that where you want to get names, get emails, get phone numbers, and even see if you can make an appointment at that time to talk to the other party. If you're just in a situation where you're doing some let's say marketing and you're selling in homes, make sure you have both the husband and the wife there. If they both go together to make a decision. If you're doing business to business, make sure that you've got access to the CEO, to the president, to the person who makes the massive buying decisions in that company. And you'd be often surprised, and what I found with my many years of doing just business to business selling is that usually the person in the front is very very aware, and they act as the gatekeeper. If they're in the reception area, or if they're the administration staff, they usually act as the gatekeeper to keep you away. So that's where you really want to work on finding out the openness they have, getting some information, even dropping off some leaflets, but getting their name and getting more access to them, and then that way you can open up the lines of communication to go in later, because it's just the first point of call. The next thing, let's say that you've got access to the decision maker, and I've written 4 things here, and I know definitely that you can't see this. I've got challenges, issues, needs, and desires. And these are really the four key things that you're looking for, that you want to explore in your second part of your conversation. Because the way you're going to get that information is you're going to be able to find out if the person has challenges that in their business that hopefully your service or your product can solve. Do they have any issues that they're working? And let's be honest, every company has challenges, every company has issues, everybody's got something that's bugging them or something that they would like to fix or do. And a lot of your conversation is finding out what those things might be, and then helping the customer or the client, help them to prioritize the importance of their challenges and their issues. And obviously we all have needs and desires, and that's always the shiny things. We all are aspiring to get new things. And if you're a person who's selling products that are desirable in the sense of that they're let's say a luxury item, you're playing a lot more on the desires than you are the needs, because that's where people want to go. And during this part of your conversation, the next thing you want to be able to do is you want to try to get permission before you go on to the next step, because these are the first two steps. And what I want to do is I've got written here, permission to offer your presentation or offer suggestions. Because once you've found some issues and once you've found some challenges that the customer has, what happens is you want to get permission. I know it sounds funny, you want to get permission to be able to offer some suggestions. And that is the really important step. And oftentimes what I find, and this is where a lot of salespeople go wrong, they tend to be afraid, and we're all afraid, to go to ask permission to do their presentation, because we're so afraid of the no that we put up so many barriers for ourselves that we just kind of go right in. But it's almost like, if you can imagine, how do I get a string from one end of the room to the other? The idea is that obviously you can't push the string from one end to the other because it's all going to get knotted up. You have to pull the string. And people are the same. You don't want to be pushing people into anything. And if you go straight away from finding a problem and then giving a solution, that's, first of all, it's way too quick for the customer. Second of all, they haven't given you permission to do that. And so you're pretty much messing up any chance that you might have to actually get further and deeper into the conversation. And this also might be a time where they'll give you a few of the things that, hey, listen, we're not interested right now, or we're not in the market. So you can deal a lot more with any kind of rebuttals at that stage when you're in your exploration stage. And that's where you might want to talk about, what they've looked at before, or, say, listen, I appreciate that. So let me explain to you what we have, if you don't mind, and it'll only take me a couple minutes. And from this, at least more about what we do and how we've helped other clients that are in the same situation. So would that be okay if I just do a really shortened version of what we do, and that way and get permission in that way? So there's a lot of little things you can do or things you can say that will basically get the customer to be okay with you going into the next step of the conversation. And if the timing is good and you've done all your engagement correctly, and you've explored and you've qualified them well, then you're getting into really where you can shine. And this is the next step. And I want to point out, before we go into the next step, how important this process is to reverse the amount of time that you talk as the salesperson with the amount of time that you're listening to the customer. Because remember, we need to be listening a lot more than we are talking. And the customer can feel that. And I have seen this time and time again, and it's really difficult to get that right. That usually what we find is that salespeople will end up talking 80 or 90% of the time, and the customer is just like that, they're battered down. And the customer feels it, and of course, you find that in selling that you're going to run out of steam if you take that approach. Sure, you're going to make some sales, sure, you're going to have some success with that, but you have to have such high energy, and what you'll find is you'll also get a lot of cancels, or you'll get a lot of disgruntled customers, or customers that, if they end up buying from you, they end up having that really massive emotional letdown, that buyer's remorse. And that's because you're railroading them into a sale. And that's not the way it works anymore. Most customers are smart enough, to stop the process or interrupt your process before you get to that point, but you're not doing yourselves any favor. And what this system is all about is about having that relationship with the customer where they know you, they love you, they take your products and services, and then they refer you and they want you to come back for more. And so this is the process of how you're going to do that. So let's say that everything is going good. You've done a great engagement, so you've introduced yourself, you've done everything correctly, and then you've gone through the exploration process, and you found like a couple of issues there that, you know what, maybe they're interested, maybe they're not, but at least you've got an agreement now to go into your next step. And this is where you want to basically start envisioning the ownership of your product or service. And this is also something that you're doing with the business. This is all about looking forward into the future as you're presenting ownership of your product or service. And what's important is that you want to be able to, at this stage, start explaining a little bit in the power of stories, like stories of customers that have had your product, what they've done with it. And if you have one really, really good story, that's usually enough. Currently, I'm right now helping out a client, and the client is working with people who have too much credit card debt. And what I find is that when I was going out doing the test marketing with this client, is that I just took one story, and a powerful story, because inside that story is a person who, for instance, lost their job. His name's, we'll just say Jim for lack of, just for ease of attaching a name to the story. Let's say Jim H., Jim Howell. And Jim was in a situation where he got ill, and unfortunately, because of his illness, he was not able to work anymore. And because he lost his job, in order to just feed his family, he basically started running up too much credit card debt to the tune of over $100,000. And this can happen. I know it's happened to people. What happened in the story with Jim is that he needed help. Obviously, he had a big challenge, a big issue, and he wanted to get back on his feet. And because he was paying so much interest on his credit card, he was never going to be able to catch up, and the debt was just piling up. But no one wants to claim bankruptcy, but there are options, and people don't realize there are options that you can get what we call a debt restructuring, and you can do a proposal, consumer proposal, and lower that debt. So what I was doing is just explaining the story a little bit. Once I got permission to explain about what we do, I would go into the story. And when you talk about a story, people kind of get into the story with you, and they follow through with the story. And at that stage, they see themselves and they feel good because they know that they're not in that bad of a situation, or at least hopefully not. But if they were, they really want to ask questions about the story. And if their situation is not as bad, and they see that Jim got out of his situation because he was able to find the right debt elimination consultant, then they were more interested. And I found that by sharing that story, more and more people said, oh, not even if it wasn't themselves, they might even know somebody in that situation. And this is how it became more powerful for me to get clients. And by using this system and just using the stories, I was able to get a 50% success rate when I went out just doing the surveys and talking to people that they either themselves knew of somebody or had somebody or got referral. And that's a pretty good success rate when you're doing this kind of just, going cold into the marketplace. The other thing that you want to be focusing on is asking questions to the customer, because this is now getting focused more on the amount of time that you should be talking. And like I said before, really bad salespeople are talking 80 or 90% of the time. What you want to be in a situation where you're only talking about 30% of the time. Now, this is the perfect situation. And can you imagine that situation that you're only speaking 30% of the time and the customer's talking 70% of the time? Do you know how much information you're going to be getting from that customer in order to then help them in the final stages of your sales process? So, because as people are talking, it gives you a chance to breathe a little bit, think about some questions that you want to ask, some intelligent questions, and just let them tell their story and tell their frustrations. And then you can really fine-tune your basically your process of telling your story and doing your presentation. In this section, presentation, it's easier to fine-tune it because they're talking. They're telling you everything in their world that they want to fix. They're telling you their desires, their needs, and what your job is to help them prioritize that and make sure that if your product or service can fit, fantastic. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to take your product or service, but at least that they know those options are available to them. Or the other thing is you might be able to help them. And you might be able to help them because let's say your product or service can't serve them, but you know of somebody's that might. And that's where you're really building that client relationship, because if you can do that, you can be rest assured that whenever they have a situation or know somebody, that they're going to refer you back. And that's where, sales is obviously, it's a process of building relationships with people and helping them truly in the right way. And if you do that, you're going to be very successful at what you're doing. And the other thing is, if you do that, you're going to set yourself so much apart from the competitors, because you're genuine, you're authentic, you care, you're showing you care to the customer, and it's going to mean everything to your sales success and your career. And that's what you really need to be focusing on. So in your envisioning and in your presentation, your stories, asking open questions, not closed questions. Open questions are questions that really usually involve around how or a why, or how do you see that, or how did that impact you, or can you scale that out? How big is the problem right now? Have you tried anything before? Do you know your options? So questions like that are more open, and they'll help people to move in a direction to get more information. And then from that, you're actually going through, because you're envisioning a future with that customer. And the last thing you want to be able to do is that this is something that you're doing mostly, is it's entertain and educate. People love to have fun. And even if it's a serious issue, when I was doing, for instance, using the example of the debt consolidation, obviously that's a very serious issue, but you can still have fun with it, because there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can still have fun with people, because of a situation where people have gotten themselves too underwater and how they've gotten themselves out of it. The other thing is that as you're talking, you're educating people. People are learning, and they're learning about your products, your services. They're learning about how it's helped other people and solved their issues. And the other thing you want to be doing is when you do talk about one of the features of your product or service, make sure that you kind of sandwich it in. I don't know if you know the sandwich technique, but a sandwich is something where you've got, for instance, you've got your feature of your product or service that you want to talk about, but first you want to talk about the needs, and then the feature, and then the benefits. So whenever you're mentioning a feature about your product, make sure that you talk about the needs first. So it would be something like, I had a friend who needed a new car, or let's say a new boat, but what he needed a boat that he could actually take skiing, because he wanted not only to go fishing, but he also wanted to skiing. So one of the great things about our boat is that it's versatile. You can use it for fishing, and you can also put the ski rack on top, and it's great for the family. So it's the best of both worlds. And then you are obviously going on about the benefit. And one of my clients who got that, he has a great time. So on Saturday he's out fishing, but on Sunday he's got the family out, and he's going, doing all the water sports and everything. So whenever you have a situation where you want to talk about one of the features of your product, make sure that you also sandwich the feature in between the need and the benefit of that product. For example, if somebody goes in and they're going to buy, a new computer, a great salesperson would ask, well, what are you going to use it for? And because that would make the difference about, the different types of computers that they want to get. And somebody says, well, I just want to use it for, basic stuff. Okay, well, you don't need that fancy one. Or they can ask, what about, price? Is price important to you? Well, I just want, do you want brand? Is brand important to you? So people will tell you about that. And then when you go in, you can say that one of the great things about this computer is it will hold, like you told me, sir, or like you told me, ma'am, it will hold 1,000 or 10,000 photos. It's got the capacity of that, plus all the movies you told me about, and it's at the price that you would like. So what you're doing is you're talking about the needs of the customer, because you find them out through questioning, the features of your product, and then the benefits. This will serve what you want to do. So when you're doing your presentation of your product, make sure that you use that formula and that process. Now, everything's going well. You've engaged with your customer. You're exploring, their needs and what their situation is in terms of their problems or their issues. Now you've envisioned, you've gone forward, and you see now a future, and they've got a sense of ownership, not only for themselves, but how other people have gotten ownership of that product. So the next logical step that you want to move into is you want to be able to enlist that customer or enroll that customer or, ask for the order. And I think that, if everything's going smoothly, you're building up that nice rapport and that nice situation. So many studies have shown that a really, the best salesmen in the world get their customers so excited and so on the edge of their seat that the person just asks, hey, stop, where do I sign up? And that's great if you've got a product or service that is that wanted and the priority is there and the person needs to fix, they've got a hole in their roof and you're a roofer and you've got the gear in the car and you can do it straight away because the priority is there, the need's there, it's about to rain. Well, those are pretty easy sales to make. However, most of the time we're not in that situation. Most of the time as salespeople we're out hunting or looking for sales. So what you'll tend to do is you'll have to be able to ask for that order. But I know that one of the important words here is assume. So during the process you want to constantly be assuming the next step of your process. You want to be assuming that the person needs your product or service. And it's all about your body language and how you talk and the tone of your voice that creates that situation for yourself. The other thing you want to be able to do in this is you want to ask. You need to ask for the order. And going back to what I was just saying, it's so important that you have that in your repertoire. The question is, what is your close? How do you ask? It can be very subtle, like, for instance, sir, shall we just go ahead and make the order? It can be in a situation or, on a scale from 1 to 10, you can ask a scale question. On a scale from 1 to 10, where are you at right now in the conversation? And they give you a number of 8. Well, what do I got to do to get it to a 10? Or what would be interesting to get it to a 10? And normally what you'll find is people will start at that stage. When you do ask for the order and you do close, sometimes people, most of the time, they won't react. And in that case, you want to obviously go back a little bit to your presentation, talk a little bit more, find out what's going on with them in their head. And you can ask things like, so, as we talked about the story, do you see yourself in that situation like that person? And then they think, oh yeah, I could see that. Well, what will we have to do to get an order today from you? And that would be obviously a direct ask, a direct question. And the other thing you want to be able to do in the enlist stage is you want to make it easy. You want to make it easy for the customer. So, sales is not supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to flow well. It's supposed to be easy. People have to, obviously be in a situation where they want your product and they want your service and they like dealing with you and they're very happy because you've solved an immediate issue or problem. And that's ultimate. And that's the process. And as you can see, sometimes conversations go up and around, but what you want to constantly be doing is having a structure in your head of where you at in the conversation with this person. And this is more, I've talked in this video more about doing it on the spot with the person, more as a direct sale where you found a prospect and you're going for the immediate close. But the process could also be longer drawn. Many sales, they need to be made over 6 or 7 times where you're either speaking with the customer or talking with the customer or dealing with the customer. But on each step, you want to be able to at least be going through the first 3. And what's nice about the most successful salespeople, they actually do go for their close in the conversation because they feel like that's the only time they really get to know 100% where the customer's head's at and where their heart's at. And I know that the most successful people that I've worked with in sales are the ones that do ask for the order. So I've got a big ask there, and I think it's important that if you're in sales right now and you find that you're not actually getting those closes, just remember that those that do succeed at a very top level are those that do ask for the order. And they will tell you, they'll admit, yes, I asked for the order, and they'll do that almost every single time. And there's going to be many resources in Sales Success Academy where you can get access to different types of closes. And I've got a download where I've asked some of the best closers in the world what their closes are, and you can get access to that. Once you've made the sale, or not, if you haven't made a sale, you still have the next step, which is encore. And an encore means you get to do it again. Encore! And it's so important that let's make the assumption that you've made the sale and you've got the order. And you want to be able to obviously the next step is to congratulate the customer on making a great decision, make them feel good, kind of get them to relax. They made a good decision. Now everything will be taken care of, and you're going to be moving into the next step, which is running through the support system. Maybe you have customer service, or they've got to go from yourself, from the salesperson, they've got to go more into dealing with the accounts department or whatever at your company. So make sure you help with that transition in the encore. And lastly, and the most important thing for you to keep your business going is referral. And I know obviously once again that these are difficult to see, but the referral side is one of the most important. Statistically, there was a massive study done with over 500,000 salespeople throughout North America, and the survey showed up that literally only 15% of salespeople actually ask for referrals after they've made their sale or order with the customer. Can you believe that? Only 15%. The other 85%, I don't know, I've done it before myself. You run out the door because you're so happy you made a sale you want to go on to the next, or you're so afraid that the customer might change their mind that I better get out of here and get out to the next thing and just keep this sale and make sure that it's in my pocket. And obviously that's the weakest form of sales that you can do, because it usually, not often, but it will come back to bite you, and that's not where you're going to be coming from. That's not a place of presence. That's not a place of honesty. So that kind of shows you why you're in the game, and referrals are everything. So you're in it, that you have the best chance of becoming a millionaire as a salesperson. You have, studies have shown that only, a third of the millionaires, self-made millionaires in the world have come from the sales field. So you're in the right game, but you need to do it in the right way if you want to be at the top of your game. So if 85% of those salespeople don't ask for referrals, technically they're just running out the door or running on to the next client. What about those 15%? What's the difference with them? Well, interestingly enough, those 15% earned 75% more in commissions than the other 85%. And this is where you get the top earners. These are the people that earn, if they're in the top bracket, $250,000 a year or above. These are the top earners. They work on referrals. So you got to ask yourself the question, scratch your head a little bit, how come I'm not asking for referrals? And if you're not, this can be the biggest game changer for you, because it's just a question. The customer's there. They're already excited. How often has it been where you've gone and actually purchased something, and all the salesperson does is say, hey, seen you like that? How about these? We've got these on special. Or you've already bought one of these. Did you know that you can get 15% off this? It's just asking. And if you do that, especially if you have a second product, that's great. Or, so great that you have this. Do you know anybody else that might be interested? Because we've got this special on right now. And what I'll do is that I'll give you a discount if you've got any referrals on your next purchase, because I know you're probably going to be interested in this, in a couple of months' time. So referrals are powerful. I have a friend who, had a really interesting system for himself, because obviously this is all a system and it's flowing through. He had just a sheet of paper, and it was a very simple sheet of paper. When he's finished up speaking with the customer and they've got their product or they've got their service and they've filled in all their forms, or they've paid the money or whatever, he would simply take out of his folder a piece of paper, and it would just have 1, 2, and 3 on it. And it just had name, phone number, email on it. And he said, if you don't mind, I'm just rolling in my business and I love, working with people and helping people out. If you don't mind, if you can think of, a couple of people, 2 or 3 people that might be interested in an order from me, or might be interested in this product, or hearing more about it, I'd really appreciate it if you can, if you can fill this in for me while I'm just getting things set up for you. And just leave the piece of paper in front of them, and people will either take it or push it away, or say, well, I don't really know right now. Oh, no problems. Okay, just leave it here. My number, here's my card. If you can think of anybody, please look it forward. Put my name forward. So what will happen is that is an encore, because it means you get to do it again. And this is how people succeed at a very high level, not just in sales, but in every business. Referrals are powerful. Have you ever gone on Amazon and bought a product and not been asked if you would like another product? This is how it works. It's successful. And obviously we want everybody in Sales Success Academy to be successful and be the utmost successful. I don't want to hear a situation where anybody in Sales Success Academy is on the 85% rule. We want to be at the top 15. We want to make sure that we're asking for our referrals at the end of a sale. and making that 75% more income, because that's how you elevate yourself and that's how you take yourself to where you want to go to the next level. So I hope this has served you. Remember, this is an entire process on how everything fits in. There's a lot of downloads on inside, obviously the formula. I want to make sure that you take this information, take it in the marketplace, leave some comments below, let me know how it's going. Let's converse with each other. If there's anything that obviously I can do to help your speech get better, or to help your close get better, or anybody from our group, that'll be fantastic. So I urge you to be strong, be bold, be brave, and go for it today. I'll see you guys on the next video. Have a fantastic day, and I'll speak to you soon.